All right. Everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for the COSA Series webinar on hiring electronic record staff. Today we have presenters from 3 different states to talk about their experiences interviewing and hiring staff. Dave Joins, Matt Veach, and Ryan Colliers. So they're also geographically dispersed. I'd like to take a moment and just say thank you to IMLS. This webinar is made possible from a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Slide. So we would put it in context for you just to get an idea of what we're going to focus on today. So if your state has a framework, and underneath that framework, digital preservation is part of the work that you do, you obviously need staff in order to be able to perform that work. And a lot of us are struggling with hiring staff and getting staff with the right skills. So today, we're going to talk about some different points associated with that slide. Things that folks have discussed is, do you train somebody who's already on staff? Do you hire an IT professional and train them on archival principles? Do you and train them in IT? What really are the skill sets of potential employees coming out of school? So our 3 presenters today are going to discuss those points from different perspectives and their experiences with them. Join me in welcoming Dave Joins, who's going to be going first.
Hear me? To be a yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'm trying to switch the slide here.
Cursor in the window, and then try using your arrow keys.
There it is. Okay, just like we rehearsed. Okay, hello, everybody. I'm Dave Jones at the Illinois State Archives, and I'm going to share our experiences with hiring an electronic records archivist. When I got here 10 years ago, electronic records, I think, and still think, was the number 1 issue facing state archives. So the first thing I wanted to do was hire an electronic records person. I don't claim to have a huge background or knowledge about electronic records. We actually, 13 years ago, before I got here, as part of our long-range plan, had made it a priority to hire an electronic records archivist. And what helped with that a little bit was our SCDAH encouraged us to do it as well. So when we approached the front office, we were always able to say, the SCDAH says we should have one as well. Nice to get them involved with this kind of planning. We began looking 10 years ago, shortly after I got here, and it really wasn't that hard to get front office buy-in. I think they recognized the importance of getting a electronic records person here. We probably put a job posting out 7 years ago, and we're new at it. I did reach out to other states for some of their ideas, and something that I want to emphasize is talk to other states with others. Don't reinvent the wheel when it comes to looking for an electronic records person. So we put out a job description that I thought was pretty good, and we sent it to different listservs, ARMA, SAA. Eventually we expanded it to universities, which is probably something we should have done in this place. The early applicants, and again, it's so funny because 7, 8, 10 years ago seems like light years ago, but it was only a decade ago. Some of the early applicants, we're looking for someone who knows record management systems, document management systems, and the early applicants, we got a lot of I can, or I can get some of your materials up in a database and up online, and that's not what we were looking for. We actually posted 3 times before we found an electronic records archivist. One piece of advice is do not get discouraged as you go through this. And I also think over the last 8 years we've come a long way, and there's a lot more people out there. The person we hired was a longtime archivist and records manager, and he had some computer background, and he was a good hire. The problem was his background was more in records management than archives. And it wasn't a problem as far as I was concerned. But the problem was that made him pretty marketable. And after a year and a half, 2 years on staff, he got a better offer for a lot more money than the state of Illinois could pay him. But overall, I'd say we were pleased to have an archivist and a records manager background. With hire, it's just that the competition then becomes rough. Following, I remember being pretty discouraged because it had taken so long to hire somebody in the first place. So I decided to go a different route, and we decided to hire an IT person who had no archives, no records management experience. Only lasted a week, and I give him full credit for that because he realized pretty quickly that the job was not for him. I think what scared him off the most was the presentations and the writing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to job descriptions. But that scared him off, and he realized that, so he went back to being an IT person. The person in this job is going to be talking to everybody, in our case, from the general counsel for the governor to, chip officials and county clerks in counties that have 4,000 people. So you need somebody who can make good presentations. And I think the IT person we hired, very good at IT. I never did get a feel or if he could handle records management systems. I think he could have, but he realized pretty quickly that there were parts of the job that he probably couldn't do. So next time we hired, we extended our search. We did the letters, but we also went to universities, and we hired a fresh graduate out of library science school who has worked out very well. He went to, again, library science school. He had an archival background, and they seem to be emphasizing electronic records more and more. So he can speak both languages. It's a very, very good mix. And the other thing we've done with him as a new guy is I've made sure he's gotten involved in COSA and all in SCDAH. In fact, he's on a chairman of a committee for SCDAH, because no matter who you hire, you really don't want them to operate in a vacuum. You want them to see what other states are doing, what other problems are out there, and you want them to feel comfortable to be able to pick up the phone and call people, no matter how good their background is. So again, I want to emphasize working with other states. When you get around to hiring somebody, it's very important to borrow from other states. Even though we have a person, and I think he's on the phone, I'm expecting him to be here for 30 years. I still, whenever I see a job description online on one of the listservs for an electronic records person, I copy it and put it in the file. You can never have enough ideas. You can never finesse your job description and duties enough, because it's so important to make sure you know what they're going to be doing. It's also important, I think, to know if the position is going to be for archives or records management or both. For the Illinois State Archives, the position itself is called an archival program administrator, which would make you think that it was going to be an archivist, but he actually does a lot more records management. And it's important that they know that coming in. Just no surprises there on both ends, I might add. So be specific on the duties that they're going to be doing. We've got it broken into percentages. And one of the most important duties, and don't underestimate this, is the ability to speak and write. It's going to be the lead person for your electronic records. He's going to have to make the case. He's going to have to speak to everybody from lawyers to IT people to elected officials, and he's got to be able to do it in a way that isn't thin and is also very understandable. And the same thing with writing abilities. We'll talk a little bit about what our hire does when it comes to writing abilities, but it's varied. So don't underestimate that when you're putting together your job description and your duties. And then finally, this was a big hire. We had been a traditional records management archives for decades, and to bring in an electronic records person was a big step. When I originally did it with the first hire, there might be some conflict between bringing in an outsider and the quote-unquote wave of the future. So there might be conflict with records management. So I placed that person under the records management supervisor, and I think that had a couple of negative aspects. It created some conflict because there was a little bit of jealousy between the records management supervisor and new kid on the block, and also created in between step between me and the electronic records person that I no longer have now. And because it is, to my mind, the most important issue facing archives, I like that the new reports directly to me, and I think that's worked a lot better than having them report to the records management person, even though the job for the most part right now is records management. The skills, their needs, when looking for a person in this position, they have to know records management systems. Again, the first people who used to apply for this job, they knew how to scan. They could even put things up online. That's what you're looking for. You want people who know databases, who know storage systems and records management systems. I think that's the key that you're looking for. I am a big that they do know archives and records management, that they come in with some knowledge of that. I don't think it's impossible to bring an IT person in, but I think knowing archives and records management is very important for an electronic records person. I think knowledge of government experience, because we're all state archivists, helps. But I think, first of all, that's teachable, and second of all, that's something that a director and staff should know about. So when it comes to dealing with, we under the Secretary of State's office, so when it comes to dealing with the front office, well, that's my job. When it comes to dealing with the governor's office or with different committees, like we have what's called the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules here, again, that's my job. I hope that my electronic records person is learning that in terms of the split between state and local government. Certainly driving all over the state giving presentations, so he's learning Illinois. He's not an Illinois native. So that's going to be learned. It's nice to have, but it's not essential. And sometimes it's nice to bring in people from the outside, even if it's from people from completely outside of government. Again, it's extremely important that your electronic records person can present ideas verbally, because you're talking to a wide variety of people who know everything about this stuff, to people who think they know everything about this stuff. So it's very important that they're able to put ideas and get a feel for who they're talking to and adjust accordingly. And it's also very important that they have good writing skills. Our, for example, has done everything from write articles for local magazines. We all have town officials and mayors and managers officials. So he's written articles that for those, to writing rules for the state of Illinois. So writing ability is extremely important. Also, when it comes to communicating, it's important to be able to talk both languages, IT and archives RM. He's going to translate what this is in IT back to those of us here at the archives building, especially the boss. And also got to be able to tell the IT people what they need from our perspective, what they need to comply with state records management laws. So communication skills, you can't forget those. To talk a little bit about possibly promoting from within. For the archives, again, we're a long-time records management archives. We have a lot of senior staff, and they're a little set in their ways. So I'm a little bit negative about promoting from within, at least for the first hire. Just because they're bound to the old ways, and I think with electronic records, you have to be up on the literature. You have to be up on the new systems, and I think it would be difficult to promote within. I have a couple records managers look at the position and inquire about it, and after I talked to them for a few minutes, it became obvious this was not a position for them. They were looking at it more as it's a higher, the way we do it here at the archives, it's a higher level position than just a records manager. They were looking at it as a promotion. But when we talked through it, they realized that it's a little different than perhaps what they do. Again, like as a first-time hire, we brought in someone from the outside, someone who's going to kind of shake things up, someone who's not bound by the old way of doing things. I think it's important that they learn how we do things. I have our electronic records person attend a records commission meeting, and we have 3 meetings a month, and familiarize himself with the rules, the statutes, and the way we do applications and disposal certificates. And this is, at this point, maybe kind of a pipe dream, but one of the goals for the future records management staff as they start to retire and I replace them, I want to make their knowledge on electronic records more mandatory than it is now, which is not at all mandatory. So I want my records person to help me draft new job descriptions for upcoming records managers. And so 5-10 years now, all my records officers at the state and local level know electronic records and have more than just kind of a cursory knowledge of it. I hired. He's not old, he's young. That's a good thing. You can see he's got a Master of Arts in Early European History, which has come in very handy in Illinois. Background in history, but it's the library science degree with the background in archives that has been so important. And again, one of the things we've done is make sure that he works with SCDAH and COSA, so not operating in a vacuum, because right now he is my electronic records person. He's the one who knows this stuff much more than anybody else here. He's looking to have an intelligent conversation about electronic records. The odds are he's going to have to go to peers in other states. Chris has been here for almost 2 years. Since he's been here, he's written new rules for the state in terms of electronic records, new standards that have to be followed. He's also written new rules for local governments. Those haven't been approved yet, but he got those down. Again, he has participated in SCDAH, and I think he's a chairman of a committee there. He's given numerous presentations. He's given advice to both state and local agencies as well as to vendors, I might add, and he's put best practices and guidelines up on our website when it comes to electronic records, and has traveled throughout the state, and he's given enough work to do. So when you go out and hire someone, an electronic records person, make sure you know that they are going to be working. And I'm going to pass it over to Matt Veach.
Sure. Hear me? Thanks, Dave. Thanks very much. I'm specifically addressing the question whether to try and hire an archivist and them into an electronic records archivist, or hire a technologist or an IT person and turn them into an electronic records archivist. And some of what I'll be talking about will kind of lap some of the things that Dave was talking about, because I'm specifically focused on skills and try to approach it from a kind of an skills analysis, and determine whether we after archivists and turn them into electronic records people, or whether we can pull from the IT community and teach them what they need to know about archives and records management. And also going to talk a little bit about the records management discipline, so pulling from the records management community and teaching them the things they need to know about preserving electronic records. So I'll just go through in some detail here some of the required skill sets from our perspective here in Kansas. I think they overlap with some of the things Dave was talking about. There's certainly, I don't think, any contradictory notions here. So I would, as I start thinking about hiring an electronic records archivist, and I should mention that that we've had a few electronic records archivists here at the Kansas Historical Society and State Archives. We've kind of done a little bit of all of the above, in terms of whether we're taking a technology person or archives person or even a record manager and turning them into an electronic record archivist. So it's we've tried it from various perspectives and had success with all three approaches. When I'm thinking about hiring an electronic records archivist and thinking about the skill sets or defining the skills that are essential to success in that particular discipline these days, I start with archives and records management fundamentals, with a bit of an emphasis on the records management side, particularly in the government environments, just basic attention and disposition scheduling, solid appraisal skills, and the ability to describe things from the archives and records management context. I'm also looking for a subject matter expert, specifically on electronic records management and digital preservation. best practices, knowledge of the projects and initiatives that are out there, the ability to be very aware of training opportunities and all of the things that are going on throughout our community to make sure that we're laying up on things. Also to keep a close watch on technology, as all of you know, is a key part of digital preservation is making sure we know in particular types of technology that we're dependent on or dependent upon are becoming potentially obsolete. Yeah, business analyst skills. There's a whole IT discipline that's BAs, business analysts, and so that in the kind of an electronic records archivist, that means you need to be able to define and analyze business processes that state agencies are carrying out, and then drill down into their information and records management systems and be able to analyze those. And then finally, to be able, as you're looking at information systems, to be able to kind of figure out where the records are being created and to be able to then conduct an appropriate appraisal, a description of those records, and ultimately schedule them and ensure that they get transferred. Those that have enduring value get transferred to a digital archives. No particular order. It's not like they're in priority order or anything, but something else I'm always looking for is an individual who is completely comfortable with technology, that they internalize technology. I prefer those who've grown up with it, which certainly not me, but others that, particularly those that we've been hiring as electronic records archivists. It's not like they came to technology later in life or anything like that. They need to be very comfortable with all types of technology that is used in a government environment, and indicated databases and FS apps and social media, mobile technology. The technology is just part of their work life. On the skills side of things, as Dave indicated, there's a tremendous need to have good interpersonal skills, to be able to write well, to be able to speak effectively, and particularly to be able to be fluent, to be able to speak multiple languages. And I'm not talking about Spanish or Italian, although that's not a bad thing, but be able to speak the language of electronic record management and digital preservation, but to be able to speak to IT people, to be able to communicate kind of the business process analysis language that has its own unique verbiage, be fluent in archives itself, and then also be able to translate all of that into the common languages to be able to speak to a general public about some of the issues that are important to us. And then I note there that initiating skills can be an important skill set as well. Been thinking about some hard skills on the technology side of things. I have a tendency to personally view these more as kind of preferred skills than required skills, although I will get disagreements with other colleagues on that, but the ability to write some code is not a bad thing. At least understand how code goes together, kind of the logic of algorithms and how computer programs are constructed, and then some knowledge, basic knowledge anyway, of IT infrastructure, so storage and systems and networking solutions and security systems and security policies, and then you have in the areas of policy development. I heard Dave about Chris Denson's work in writing new administrative rules in Illinois. So a lot of times we're operating at the policy level. We need to understand how things go together. Oftentimes an electronic records archivist must be a trainer, and they need to be a marketer and a salesperson. Those can be very, very essential skill sets when we're trying to make those people that may not be aware of what we're trying to do, try to convince them that there's value to what we provide in the way of electronic records management advice and assistance, or even in the area of providing digital archive services. And then finally, an electronic records archivist needs to be comfortable with kind of working or other organizations and even our own organizations through organizational change management. concepts and ideas. I mean, a lot of times we're trying to promote change. I've often kind of classified this skill in a different way as being someone who's a change agent, someone who can actually create change. I think increasingly it's just someone who is comfortable helping others manage change in the way that they do business. Don't be frightened of this chart. When I was asked to do this talk, or agreed to do this talk, kind of just as I was preparing the slides, I asked our current electronic records archivist, her name is Joanna Hammerschmidt, and she's been on staff for, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks at this point, and I asked her to give me her thoughts on whether one should hire an IT person and turn them into an electronic records archivist, or whether you should hire an archivist and turn them into an electronic records archivist, or whether we should hire a records manager and turn them into an electronic records archivist. And having given her approach to things, this is what she came up with. And the chart, and we will be making this chart available in its original spreadsheet form for anyone who's interested in it. It was particularly interesting the way she broke things out by kind of hard skill sets and skill sets, and then there's a black line there, a horizontal black line that kind of breaks those skills into anything above that skill set is a required skill, anything below that is a preferred skill, and then you can see that green means that that particular discipline is more likely to be expert in that skill. The orange is an advanced knowledge of that particular skill or advanced capacity in that particular skill, immediate, and then kind of a basic knowledge or perhaps even unskilled. And to go through each one of those in any detail, that's something that if you're interested, you can take advantage of this on your own. And obviously the expected level of knowledge in each one of those skills is going to vary by individual manager who's making the hire and by institution and the environment that you find yourself in. In our case, this was kind of how we assessed it here at the Kansas Historical Society, and note that my general conclusion is, based on all of this, is that you could hire from either 3 disciplines. You can hire an IT person and turn them into an electronic records archivist. You can hire an archivist and you can end up with a very successful electronic records archivist. You can also take a records manager who a records manager with a lot of IT background and can also be successful. Something I think issues to be aware of as you're thinking through this is that no matter who you hire, there will be skill gaps. It's very difficult for someone to be able to be expert in each and every one of the skills. So when you're hiring someone and you identify the gaps that person may have, make sure that you have time and funding available to provide the training to address any gaps in those skills. It's also critical to make sure that individual that you're considering for the job, I think it's potential that they have the soft skills identified there. Those are much harder to teach, particularly those interpersonal skills, those verbal and written communication skills, negotiation skills, marketing and sales skills. Those kinds of things are a little bit harder to provide training. Those things, a lot of people, you just kind of have those or you don't, and it's difficult to develop them over time. And then finally, I also think as we're writing our job descriptions, we should at least make an effort to not completely eliminate any one of those disciplines. So write our job descriptions in such a way that a key person would at least consider applying for the job, because we may be limiting our pool of potential applicants if we don't do that. So then finally, in our real world experience here at the Historical Society, we've had an archivist as an electronic records archivist, and that individual was very successful. It took a fair amount of training on the key side of things to bring that person to fill the gaps in knowledge. That is certainly one way to go, and it's a way that can be successful. I mentioned that, and I say this a lot, and others don't necessarily agree with me, but my long-term goal is to drop the electronic records kind of modifier and reach a point where all of the archivists that we hire and all of the records managers or records analysts that we hire are fully versed in handling electronic records and digital preservation. I just would like to reach a point where it's just a given. Certainly not there yet. As far as the technologist to electronic records archivist transition or approach, fortunate enough here at the Kansas Historical Society to also be the Director of Information Technology, and so I've got 4 IT staff who are over whom I have some degree of influence over the kinds of things that they work on, and so all 4 of those technology people are somewhat experienced in electronic records issues and are aware of digital preservation issues, some more than others. In particular, we've taken our database administrator, and she's really become expert on some of the preservation metadata requirements that a digital archives has. And so those are things where if you have the good fortune to have a little bit of control over the technology folks in shop, you can teach them bits and pieces of electronic records and digital preservation that can really be of value to you. I've never taken a pure technologist and turned them into a full-fledged electronic records archivist. I can certainly see that could be done. But I can speak from direct experience on that particular transition. And then finally, and I would like to emphasize this, increasingly the information schools out there, the library and information schools, are generating essentially born archivists. They are electronic records archivists. They're trained to be electronic records archivists. They are out there. They're graduating every year. And I really think we need to do our best to attract them to state archives. We may not always offer the highest salaries, but some of the challenges that we can offer to these people are tremendously interesting and exciting, and they're important challenges to try and conquer, try to come up with solutions for them. And so I would encourage you, if you're looking for an electronic records archivist, to direct some of your marketing efforts, some of your recruitment efforts directly to the information schools that are out there. Don't just rely on your regular state jobs website. Actually contact or register with the job boards at some of the information schools and advertise your job there. And I think you'll be surprised that you may get more interest than you might think. And I'll turn it over to Brian. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hear me? Okay, great. Popped up on my screen. Let's make sure I can advance slide. Anyways, my name is Brian Collars. I'm an archivist in the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, and I'm going to talk about the experiences we recently in hiring an electronic records archivist. So what we'll talk about is our experiences here, what we learned from the rights and wrongs of what we did, and present the electronic records archivist we hired just recently, just a little over a month ago. Started on the 2nd of June. So, case in point, a little history. The Department of Archives and History in South Carolina had a strong records management, strong records program going back over 20 years. We maintained that program until 2007, when our old professional retired due to budget cuts across the nation. And then the emerging electronic records archivist we had on staff, who was actually an IT person that we trained for 3.5 years being our electronic records archivist. We had an IT position in a different state agency, and we were left in a void with nothing to fill. I've been a true records archivist. We've done training in IT and electronic records, so I was sort of left holding what was the remnant of our program and try to sustain it. But I had varying duties outside of the electronic records program. From 2007 onwards up until last year, the program in South Carolina was sort of in a whole. We were trying to maintain the stuff we'd had and the knowledge base we'd had through me. But we were fragmenting, and we basically had to start over again. What the ability for this for South Carolina to start over again was 18 months ago. The governor, well, actually it's 2 years ago, the state got caught deleting emails, and we were able to meet her and encourage her to not only craft a schedule with her records, but also use that to expose the governor to the issues in us in the electronic records field. And the result of that was that last year, legislative approval for a professional electronic records archivist was reinitiated, and we were able to hire one. Started the process of us hiring electronic records. The problem was that nobody on staff knew how to do it. I've been at the State Archives for over 20 years, and I was practically a professional hire other than this electronic records archivist we hired in the early 2000s. And to think about how we crafted, what was the job announcement going to look like, was it going to be posted? So the first thing to do was actually an announcement and craft one. And as David mentioned, what I should do is look at other states and see what kind of job announcements they have. I actually contacted North Carolina and Kentucky, but fortunately I didn't take my advice and drafted this ill-prepared statement here, which you can go back and look over. It's okay. It's not quite as detailed as experiences would lead us to come to recognize at the end of the process. And I'll dwell on it, but it's a fairly basic, broad descriptive duties and what we were seeking in an electronic records archivist. But I think it could be much stronger if we were to compare it and contrast with the job announcements that have occurred over the last 5 or 6 years, as few as they are, as many as they are. The most prominent thing I should point out is preferred qualifications, which was a degree in library and information science or graduate training in archives administration. Despite that, I honestly think that those qualifications need to be more than just preferred. They need to be minimum. Archivists and our experience bore that out or bear that out. So essentially we have the legislative approval for a position. We had to struggle with how to actually craft and announce the job announcement. And originally, the job announcement just went out on the state jobs website, and the applicants we had certainly bore out in terms of the quality received or applicants that were applying to the position. Then we'll talk about the applicants, or I'll speak of the applicants, the applicant review process, and the actual interviews in the rest of this experience. So, applicants that we had were very based upon that original judgment and the fact that it just went on state job site. And I mean, we got a wide range of applicants. In the first I had to read the application for at once, but we had security guards with DED supply, paralegals, administrative assistants, a sorority advisor, worked for a sorority, and thought that provided her the infrastructure and the knowledge base to be an electronic records archivist, social workers, insurance agents, and all that at least 5 to 60% of the applicants recent graduates of library schools. In a small independent agency, we don't have an HR staff. We have one HR person who's really busy doing the things that he does. So the actual review of all the applicants, and we had it over over the course of both times position. We had roughly 175 applicants for the position. I had to go through and actually view each application and eliminated 90% of them, and that's a sort of a time-consuming thing. So if you don't have a NAICS staff or even a site HR agency to do it, be prepared to actually have to read through all the applications and make the ones that don't fit your criteria or don't fit needs. But common issues for rejection, of course, were the lack of formal training, the GEDs, the security guards, the needs of an electronic records archivist, the ability to tell what an electronic record is. Most of the applicants that expressed an interest that had some degree of training, some of them didn't understand the difference between digitization and electronic records archivist, or what an electronic record is versus digitization. And other common issues for rejection, it was clearly evident that they didn't have they relied elsewhere, not in electronic records. And the person we wanted to hire, we wanted them to be focused and actually in doing electronic records, because we wouldn't have to reinitiate our program here. We wanted somebody that was interested in doing that. Instead, I had one applicant who told me that he was actually using this as a springboard to get his PhD, and he was just holding on until he could get a PhD program. That doesn't help. But successful applicants had three primary that attracted them. One was an MLIS or an administration degree. They internship or work study position in an archival setting dealing with electronic records, or had at least exposure to electronic records in those settings. And primarily, one of the aspects of our job application listed other less spoken, and this sort of refers back to what Matt mentioned in terms of languages, and part of the additional languages we look for was people who recognized that the position required them to understand metadata schemas, or some sort of programming language, C++, SQL, Visual Basic, etc., or had a exposure to archival languages in terms of, they'd mentioned Mark or Dublin, something like that. Just those are indicators, at least in an application, to give you an idea. They at least have some sort of idea about what an electronic records archivist needs in terms of setting language skills. So that led into the interviews, and they were conducted. Some of the principal questions, of course, digitization, or what is it with digitization? So the process, once we eliminated all the virtual candidates that were unsuitable, we're left with about 10 or actual candidates that were worthy of hosting an interview. And we screened them first with phone interviews and wanted to conduct in-person interviews. But given distances, it's sometimes hard to conduct in-person interviews, so we substitute Skype. And it's a very effective means of actually interviewing a potential candidate for your position, because you not only get to hear them like you do a phone interview, but you also get to see them. And sometimes that is a real benefit when when hiring somebody. It's good to see the visual cues. Just like an in-person interview is better than just a purely a phone interview. So we were conducted. It also gave indication of whether or not the individual is familiar or comfortable with technology. And it's also another indicator that Matt had mentioned, something you want to look for in a potential hire. And so it's sort of provide supplemental evaluation of a potential candidate. If they're comfortable using Skype, had the ability to do it. Some type of problems that we encountered in some of those interviews on our end in terms of connection speeds and things like that. But overall, a very positive experience, and I highly recommend it if you're going to be conducting interviews over long distances and you want to pay the fees to maybe bring somebody in. So it is certainly worthwhile to invest in. So the questions that we asked, and we asked the broad range of general interview questions in terms of personal skills, how they dealt with conflict, and sorts of personal interview questions that get in almost 90% of all interviews. But technically asked that I think are important to ask and reveal a lot about the potential candidates. Were what do you think are the biggest challenges for managing electronic records currently, and how this change over the next 5 years? Just as a basic understanding of what electronic records are, no right or wrong answer here, but it's more a question. Can you explain or talk about what the challenges are? You're looking for sustainability, preservation, those sorts of things, and how stuff's going to last over time, and what might archives or what might this potential candidate bring to the table in terms of trying to address that particular issue and expose you to their knowledge base of it. Open source is a huge deal right now when you start talking about archival electronic records preservation, whether you open source software. And so the questions, this particular question was geared not towards the potential candidate had a solution, but whether they had exposure to it and could speak to it, or at least a knowledge base that open source software was out there. And so that was a revealing response to that. Once again, no right or wrong answer, just looking for the quality of the answer they gave rather than the quickness of it. The next one was the one that tripped most people up, and it was the way I actually phrased the question, but basically it's discuss how the use of proprietary software that relates to archives and long-term storage of electronic records. In this particular, I was looking for a particular answer of the fact that proprietary software tends to limit the ability of access over the long term. And even of the 11 we brought in or interviewed, only to answer this particular question correctly. And it once again, I think it may have been the way I asked it rather than the way I was looking for an answer. But it's a very difficult question and one that required a certain amount of training and exposure to the electronic records issues that need. The next, what is a file naming convention and why is it important? Me with the inability of over 100% of our interviews to answer that question. And I'm not sure why that is, because all of them had exhibited digitization. All of them had at least reported to have training in electronic records. That they couldn't understand why it was important. Maybe it's going to do with the school or not master's level schools understand the importance of this, but it may learn trade, because I don't think I knew about it until I got into electronic records. And then finally, we asked questions about what archival software have they utilized or been exposed to, just to get a basis of understanding Archimatica, Preservica, or whatever, if they were even aware of it. And those are sort of the cutting edge things that we were for. A successful candidate was able to actually answer all of these questions with some ability of knowledge and success, whereas some of the others tripped up. Like I said, 80%, 90% of them missed the file naming convention question. But these are ones that we were looking for at least an intelligent answer to that they could speak to, rather than, well, I have no experiences with that. Well, no, I can't answer that question. And these are, each institution is going to have a different set of these questions, but it's the responses you get to the technical questions, I think, that will give a really good indicator whether or not you have a successful candidate that you're interviewing for your particular position. Finally, we get to what is digitization. Most of the interviewed is applied over 75% of them equated electronic records with digitization, as in they had exposure to digitization either in an internship or a work study position, and equated that to their ability to manage electronic records environments or be an electronic records archivist. And I'm not saying that you can't transfer one to the other, but come to school as a basis for being an electronic records archivist, any document or a semester doesn't quite give you the skill set to do it. And this was borne out by the fact that many of the applicants who had exposure to digitization couldn't be broader electronic records issues questions. So that's something to think about when you're looking at applications or thinking about interviewing a potential hire. What exposure to it? Is it only digitization? or just some broader range of skill sets via another work study or intern position they've experienced. One of the things that we learn, rights and what we learned during this process, that job announcement went out purely to the state jobs portal here in South Carolina. And once again, this is a notation or realization on our part that we didn't really know how to hire somebody because we haven't done it in so long, at least professional staff at the archival level. And we essentially relied on the state jobs portal. And as a result, the 59 applicants during that first job announcement were less suitable. Once again, we only had like 4 or 5 people that even minimally qualified for me to conduct phone interviews with. Your court let us on the back of that. And another weakness we had was we only left the job announcement open for 30 days, so there was a time limit on it. And we learned from that rather than time limit on it, you need to leave it open until filled, rather than say we're only going to accept applications from the first of the month to the end of the month. Trying to limit the pool of applicants because it really limited the pool of applicants, but it also artificially, I think, limited the quality of applicants that we got. I fully favor the leaving it open until the position is actually filled. I also learned that we actually needed to position announcement on professional job posts, SCDAH, the archival listserv, other et cetera, place that will attract a different type of applicant that may not be aware of South Carolina Department of Archives or the South Carolina job portal. But you should be aware that when you post to these variety of sites, that employment agencies are mining those sites. So even if you posted early to professional job posting sites, you're going to get applicants that do not meet the qualifications. In fact, the security guard applicant that who applied actually came through the SCDAH website, which kind of surprised me, but you never tell. You can't rely on your HR staff to weed out unsafe applicants unless you have a larger agency or you're connected in with a much broader agency we have. Once we're small, we're independent since we were founded, so we do a lot of stuff hands-on. And ask pertinent technical questions that are applicable to your institution. You're starting over again, so skill sets and sorts of questions we were asking to rely on that is going to rebuild or reinstitute an electronic records program. Your particular institution's different. You may already have an existing program. We're looking for somebody to supplant or replace an existing hire or grow your program at whatever your situation is. So some of the things we did right and what we did wrong. Once again, I think the Skype interviews were very useful and something we did do right. We have to ensure that the person you hire meet at least 5 to 90% of your qualifications. Now, I had Matt's little spreadsheet when we were doing ours. It's very daunting to look at, but I think it's a help not only for him, but it would be for us or anybody looking to bring something on. And it's, as David mentioned also, you have to be very patient because it took us 2 announcements over 8 months to actually hire the position we hired, or the individual we hired, and he's worked out great. So like he came on June 2nd, he's part of doing cluster work and helping us get ready to create a TDR and get our electronic records program back up and running here in South Carolina. I look forward to working with him for many years to come. And so the question may be, should we have advertised more for an IT individual? And that sort of ties in all 3 presentations today as I'm winding down. And I think when we advertised this position was that we wanted to hire an electronic records archivist rather than professional for a variety of reasons, but primarily 2. Electronic records archivist has an understanding and a desire to work with records. primarily in environments, but also in paper environments, because they are tied together as we transit. Well, the period of transition is many state agencies and leaders are transitioning from one to the other, paper, electronic, and we need somebody to understand that the particulars of both sides of it. But as Matt B. mentioned, forward, a records archivist or records artist or archivist in general will be, identified by the prefix electronic. They're just going to be archivists, and same with analysts. They're going to have to bridge both gaps, transitioning into the electronic record side of it. It's the primary focus rather than paper, but we're still at a period of transition, and we need to be able to manage both. And in terms of the IT person or an IT transitioning an IT into the electronic record position, so we look at it that IT professionals tend to move around a lot because their skill sets, so one, allows them to do that, and two, because there's demand for their skill set, and it's hard to hire those individuals, spend time training them in the records of it, only have them leave because a higher paid job or another opportunity is out there for them that they can transition into. So in the end, it seemed more viable for this agency to go with an electronic records archivist out of school or somebody that had some exposure to it versus IT staff. And what we're hoping to do is rely on these staff that are willing to come in and work for a short period of time on contract to out those tough issues in the IT side of it that we were unable to do on. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to the new electronic records archivist in South Carolina, Brian Thomas, who has arts and history and a master's of information science with an specialization in archives. And turn back over to Becky.
Thank you. Wrap up with the remaining slides. Yep, you did. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Wow, that's a great presentation, and I really, having gone through the process myself recently, it's a very interesting one, so I really appreciate everything that Matt and Dave and Brian all shared. I agree with them totally. So do we have any questions for coming on your clock? So Mark, we have a question about salary. Many of these positions are being hired as entry-level positions rather than with the potential head of a program. And keep anyone in IT skills in state government, especially when only getting paid as an Archivist 1. So would the three of you like that issue?
Yeah, this is Dave. The salary is a little bit higher than an entry-level Archivist 1 position. You have to balance that against guys who've been there 20, 30 years who keep track of this stuff. When we initially started hiring, and the first times we struck out, actually the personnel office said, well, let's even put the position there because I thought we had a pretty decent salary to start. But our personnel office raised the title, which meant our starting salary. And I think that's a good question, and we pay more than just a starting records archivist.
Yeah, this is Matt. I would comment that back in about 2000, so 14 years ago, we actually reclassified an internal archives or archivist position to more of an IT classification. It's currently, the current position is a policy and program analyst position, so it's not exactly IT, but it's certainly not an entry-level archivist position, and it does pay a little bit more than our entry-level positions do.
Brian, I'll concur with both Matt and Dave. We actually offer this position at a bit higher than what we would hire just coming in to be a reference archivist or paper, just based because the need for the technical skills is so much more, and that you have to provide things commensurate with what not only others are doing, but within your own institute as well.
Veronica Martzel, comment that we need to move to all archivists having electronic record skills, and we need to see those salaries follow suit. I would agree with that as well. Are there any other questions?
Question down in the Q&A box.
Yeah, this is Matt. I don't know, I assume everybody can see that, but it says, have any of you had issues of pushback from having your electronic records archivist provided by when maybe your own archive/records management program internally isn't doing everything up to best practices? That's certainly an issue here in Kansas. Not so much that external folks know that we don't do everything in accordance with that best practices internally, but we feel almost embarrassed sometimes that we're not doing things that the way we should be. And so we're really that's actually something we're trying to change, and we're going to try to model behavior more effectively than we have in the past. I would look to Brian and Dave for other comments on that.
This is Dave. Yeah, that's a great end. No, I don't know that people outside know, but internally we know, and of course we do want to lead by example. Not just for the state archives, under the Secretary of State's office. So one of the job duties that's in the job description is not only are you doing policy for the state, you have to deal with Secretary of State. I don't want my boss to be embarrassed somewhere where these rules that we're not following. So it's a bigger agency. I mean, Secretary of State's office is a pretty good-sized office. So even outside just the archives, I want to make sure my boss, my elected official, that we're up to snuff as well.
Well, since our electronic records was just started a month ago, he's still getting himself familiar with not us. He's coming from Colorado, so he's still basically trying to adjust to living in South Carolina, moving the clear of Colorado to the humid air here. But I cannot envision where there's going to be a lot of contention and pushback from the archives records management side, because the archives side is me and one other guy, and we're in coach that they're working together to push us forward, as we all recognize that electronic records is the future of our agency is, and we've got to prepare ourselves and build something that's sustainable and long term. So there's not a lot of contention in our records management program. It's just right around the corner, and we work closely with them now, and we'll continue to do so going to the forward as everybody within the agency as a whole recognizes the need for this.
Hey, I don't see any other. Oh, there's some more questions. Oh, other questions? I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A. And we are coming up on well, it's after 3 o'clock. So just wrap this up. I'd like to thank all 3 of our presenters today for sharing their wisdom gained and their experiences with us. And just to remind you that you will be getting an evaluation that's going to automatically open in your web browser when you exit the session, and we definitely look at the feedback. We're still in the process of planning some other webinars, so if you have ideas or something that you'd like to hear about, please let us know. The next free educational webinar is scheduled for July 22nd at 2 p.m. One's going to be really exciting because it's the PERTS portal overview, which is the best practices and tools, the portal that they've been putting together. So please join us for that. The entire webinar schedule is available on the COSA website, as well as the webinar slides today are going to be available to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We certainly appreciate it. Hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.